And welcome back for the third week of Hurry Up High School Huddle. This is Anniston Star Preps writer Brandon Miller, back to talk to you guys about this week's games. I'm here with our columnist Joe Medley, and as opposed to week 2, week 3, we've got nearly every county team playing at home with a few teams playing other county teams. First game we're going to talk about today is Hoax Bluff at Alexandria. Alexandria in week 2 went up to center and lost to Cherokee County, kind of raised some eyebrows on both levels, especially after Alexandria did beat Oneonta, who at the time was ranked second going into the season in their jamboree, and Cherokee County was fresh off of a very lopsided loss to Piedmont. And this one, the big question is, how does Alexandria bounce back? The good news is they're playing not so great Hoax Bluff team, but with the youth and kind of inexperience that the Valley Cubs do have, this is kind of a good game to pick things back up before they get into the harder part of the region.
Yeah, Brandon, here we are again with Alexandria, another slow start, and we've seen this a lot in recent years where they get off to a slow start and then they kind of pick up at the last 6-7 weeks of the season and wind up in contention in the region again. I was really shocked that they lost to Cherokee County. That team has only won one of its previous 11 games. But again, we've seen this before out of the Valley Cubs, and I think they start that annual rally against a winless Hoax Bluff. The next game on the schedule that we want to look at is Anniston at Lincoln, and you've got to wonder about Lincoln. They've lost their coach and one of their best players to Oxford this year, and they might be a little bit down after an 0-2 start and a loss to rival Munford, a Talladega County rival. But, they've played strong competition to this point in Munford and Leeds, and Anniston was feeling pretty good about things after they beat Greenville, but got knocked down a peg last week too by number 10 Cleburne County. So Lincoln is at home. They beat Anniston last year, and I tend to think the Golden Bears are going to take this one.
Yeah, with Anniston and Lincoln both, they both played teams that are arguably going to win the region in Munford and Cleburne County, who actually both play this week as well. The biggest thing to look at with both of these, they've got a rebound, and I know with Anniston, I spoke with Coach Eddie Bullock after the game, and his team is still trying to get there. They're still very young. They're still trying to find their identity. And he's saying that they're not going to be there until probably week 4, week 5. At the same time, it's going to be a good matchup. It's going to be quite a road test for Anniston. With Lincoln, as Joe mentioned, they've got to find something. They lost so much after last year. And this one, we're really going to see kind of who's moving in the right direction. Next up, we've got a good old private school battle with Donahoe traveling to JCA. And I've got to say, Joe, I really liked what I saw out of Donahoe last week against Coosa Christian. I thought it would be lopsided, and it was, and more. And that's the Donahoe team. I think that you should see this first half of the season trying to build up to play the tougher competition in their region. I think they're going to get JCA again this year, and hopefully both of these teams will come out of this week kind of knowing what they still need to improve, moving into the next week.
Yeah, Donahoe really seemed to get their act together in beating Coosa Christian 42-14 last week, and after a very mistake-prone showing in their season opening loss to Valley Head, and maybe that shouldn't have been surprising that they struggled so much against Valley Head, because Donahoe was one of those teams that did not play a jamboree, and when you see so much improvement from that first game to the second one, and for Donahoe, Valley Head truly was the first game. Jacksonville Christian took it on the chin against a pretty strong Collinsville team last week, and again, Donahoe really seemed to get their act together, so I like Donahoe in this one. Cherokee County at Jacksonville is suddenly a more interesting game than you might have thought before last week. I would have said it was a no-brainer for Jacksonville, but Cherokee County came to life last week and beat Alexandria, which is still kind of shocking to me to even say that. And you wonder which Warrior team will show up. I like Jacksonville at home with Dominic Thomas, who had 165 yards rushing last week in the 40-20 victory over Hoax Bluff, and in Jackson Bell, who got 116 last week. And I tend to think that they're probably the stronger team. But what's up with Cherokee County? Got to break up the Warriors.
This is going to be a very fun game if Cherokee County really brings it to Jacksonville. But with that said, I love what Jacksonville's doing this year. Obviously, they played a 2A team with Pleasant Valley in the opener, and they played a not great Hoax Bluff team last week. But they haven't been challenged to this point, and their offense is just crazy with Dominique Thomas and Jackson Bell, and you can't leave out Sid Thurman, and you definitely can't leave out their defense either. Like I said, I don't think they've been challenged yet. They will be eventually down the road. It may be this week, but until Jacksonville starts kind of slipping up a little bit, it's hard to not go with them. Next game we've got on deck is Ranburne at Ohatchee. With Ohatchee, obviously last week traveling to Fultondale, that's a really tough game. We discussed it last week, and that's a hard game to win. But with Ranburne, Pleasant Valley last week brought just about everything they could, and when Pleasant Valley decided to go for two on the first series in overtime, the game was going to be won or lost right there. Ranburne came out with the victory, but Ranburne's playing good football right now. 2-0, and I like them in this one, but if Ohatchee's going to find who they are and move in the right direction, hoping that it's not too late, it's got to happen this week.
Ranburne, I think they kind of cleared a hurdle last week because they won a game that they probably, it was going to be a difference maker game in terms of making, maybe the third or fourth spot in that region in the playoffs. And so that's kind of a relief for them in that 2A region and beating Pleasant Valley in dramatic fashion in overtime. The thing that I like about Ranburne and the question I had about them this year is what kind of balance they would have after losing Jared Edwards, who once I saw him play quarterback last year, I was really stunned at how good he was. But Dylan Wiggins is showing a passing dimension, and they still got Dylan Tullis in the running game, and they're showing me some balance. And as long as they don't have a letdown after a dramatic win against Pleasant Valley, I think the Bulldogs get it done against winless Ohatchee. Moving along to the big 6A game this week here in the county, you got Gadsden City coming to Oxford, and Oxford surprised me last week, giving number 2 Clay Chalkville such a strong game on the road. They were leading 27-14 going into the fourth quarter, and then it went bad in a hurry in the fourth quarter. Rock Thomas tried to play through the ankle injury, but wasn't the same running back after the second quarter, and you have to wonder how he is this week. He left the field on crutches and came out of the locker room in a boot, and I understand he's been in some physical therapy this week, and so you got to wonder about what he's going to be like. If he can't play or can't play like Rock Thomas this week, I have to pick Gadsden City in this game. But if he plays and can play like Rock Thomas, I think Oxford wins at home, and what is a must-win region game for them.
Yeah, the injury to Rock is a really big factor in this game, obviously. I mean, anytime you have a 5-star running back that may or may not play, it's big. But from week 1 to week 2, Oxford went from a team where we're really questioning going into that Clay Chalkville game to now we're saying, maybe they do have this. That's big in the first place. I thought, Ty Weber came out. He played much better last week. And even though you could argue that they should have beaten Clay Chalkville, that things really went bad in a hurry in the fourth, that type of thing, that was really a sign as to where they are. With that said, they do need Rock in this game. They're going to need him for the season if they're going to make the postseason. And it's a must-win game with Rock, playing like Rock. They've got it. I agree with what you said, Joe. Next up, we have Piedmont at Glencoe. Said last week, I'll take Piedmont until they lose. I'm sticking to that. I'm going to keep it very short and simple. Piedmont came out last week, gave Asheville all they could handle. Piedmont's already scored more than 100 points this year, and that's just outstanding for the Bulldogs. And they've got this one.
Yeah, easy choice for me here, especially after seeing Glencoe last week in that 38-13 loss to Weaver. They have size up front, but I just didn't see much firepower at the skill positions, and Piedmont's just too strong. Piedmont, the Glencoe could probably use one of Piedmont's quarterbacks that they have to spare. Going on to Vincent at Pleasant Valley. Really tough loss last week for Pleasant Valley, falling in overtime to Ranburne on a failed 2-point conversion like we talked about earlier. That might prove again to be a game that the Raiders had to have for a chance in the playoffs. They're 0-2, but still I think they are better than their record, and Welborn had its way with Vincent last week. If Pleasant Valley can pick up itself after a tough loss last week, I think the Raiders get this one behind another strong showing by Drew Lewiski, who had 109 yards and scored 4 touchdowns last week. And now moving right along to Susan Moore at Sachs. I have not seen Sachs in person yet, but one of the referees at the Weaver-Glencoe game last week told me that he saw Sachs in week 1, and he really thinks they're strong. They've had routes of Welborn and White Plains so far, and I think they keep it going against Susan Moore, which is 1-1 and lost last week to Cleveland.
I agree with you there, Joe. Sachs is one of the most impressive teams in this county right now. As good as their offense is, scoring at will, their defense is probably even better. They've got so much speed that right now nobody can really hang tough with them. Next up, we've got White Plains' third consecutive county matchup when Weaver travels to White Plains on Friday night. With Weaver, this is another situation. They've got another big team just like Glencoe. I really like the way that Timothy Hawkins and the Bearcats handled last week's game. I think they'll do it again with White Plains. It should be a good game. I think White Plains will challenge them, but at the end of the day, I think Weaver's just has too much athleticism.
Yeah, I agree. Weaver has got that thing you really can't coach. They've got speed and they've got playmakers, and they don't have have a lot of size on the offensive line, but they have enough to get in people's way long enough to get those guys out. And boy, Timothy Hawkins really gets out there. He had the 75-yard run last week against Glencoe and had the 73-yard pass to Matthew Durham, who, by the way, is pretty fast in his own right. He took that catch and run and took off with. He covered most of the ground with the ball. And then, of course, Timothy Hawkins had the 100-yard interception return last week, and Christopher Troje had a 46-yard touchdown run. So they got some home run hitters on that team, and all they need is a little bit of a seam, and I think they have more athletes than White Plains. Moving right along to Victory Christian at Wellborn. You don't really have to say much about this game. Wellborn looks like they got their mojo back last week, 541 yards rushing, and that's what you expect to see out of this Wellborn team under Jeff Smith. And Kevin Mixon had 258 yards, Chance Goodman had 109, and they got a lot of guys they can come at you with. And Victory Christian, hate to say it, but they're kind of the schedule break for every team in that region. And I think Wellborn comes out of this one with a pretty lopsided score.
For Victory Christian, the last thing they want to do this year is go back to Wellborn after the 73-0 loss last year. But, unfortunately, they are going back to the Hill. I don't know if it'll be this lopsided this year, but, it may be another shutout. Wellborn will get a big win. And lastly, looking at Mumford at Claiborne County, maybe I'm in the wrong here, but it's hard to not think that this may or may not be the game that decides Class 4A Region 5. We've got two teams. They each have big-time players. Mumford's got Monteo Garrett. Claiborne County's got Trey Bolton. With this one, flip a coin. Heads, one team wins. Tails, the other team wins. I'm not really sure. It's going to be quite a battle in Heflin. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, in one way, I kind of see opposites here, in that I think that Munford's got a lot of athletes. Cleburne County's got a lot of they've got some good skill guys too. But I kind of see Cleburne County as that team that's been where Munford's trying to get right now. Yeah, they've not had great years in the last few years, but they have a history there, and I playing at home, I kind of see that I would give them in the edge in this one, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if Mumford won.
All right, guys, that'll wrap it up for week 3 of Hurry Up High School Huddle. Thanks for joining us again, and we will be back next Tuesday for week 4, and we'll discuss the week 3 games and how everything shook out. As always, hope you guys have a great Friday night, great weekend, safe travels wherever you go, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.